Chapter 3, Maintenance Instructions, Section 1, Removal of Equipment from Service, 28, Engine Grouping, Mecanum Wastetex Lubrication Oil Filter Element. Remove the 4 nuts and eye bolts to the top filter body, remove the cap, remove the filter element to replace the element, reverse this procedure. Oil tank lube. After oil has been drained from the lube of the oil tank, all piping connected to the tank, remove the left door, remove the cap screws from the legs at the bottom of the tank, remove the 4 cap screws holding the lube oil tank panel, move the tank to the outside of the hood, turn the tank and remove through the small door opening to the replace the lube oil tank. Reverse this procedure. Lube oil cooler. Disconnect the shutter arm assembly, remove the grill shutter assembly by removing the bolts on the hood of the front section. Disconnect the piping to the lube oiler cooler. Remove the 8 bolts holding the lube oil cooler to the frame structure. Cooling the unit to taking from the locomotive to reassemble. Reverse this procedure. Air cleaners. Remove the wing nuts on both sides of the air cleanup one. Oil sump. Sump will now drop down. Service in accordance with the TM 55-1046 and TM 55-1046-1 and replace the air cleaner sump in reverse procedures. E. The dirt collector. Remove the bulb, empty the sediments, replace the bulb. F. Lube oil filter. Remove the 4 bolts with retaining lugs. Unscrew wing nuts on top of the filter body. Replace the element to assemble the reverse procedures. G. H. Heat the heater. Remove the exhaust pipe from the removing metal screws at the top of the heater. Disconnect the water pipes and the fuel lines. Remove from 4 1.5 foot cap screws at the base, and this will allow the unit to be removed from the locomotive. To replace the replaced unit, reverse this procedure. Water heater tank. Remove the numbered 3 door on the left hand side of the locomotive drain tank. Disconnect the fuel line. Remove the 4 cap screws at the bottom of the legs. Tank can now be removed from the locomotive. To replace the tank, use the reverse procedure. I. The muffler. Remove the cap screws and the inlet outlet flanges. Remove the cap screw and the support strap. Slide muffler until the forward turning of the removal either on the left hand or the right hand side of the number 1 or number 2 door. Replace the reverse procedures. 29. Blower assembly. The blower. Remove the 10 cap screws from the panel at the right side of the cab. Loosen the 4 screws in the blower base. Loosen adjusting screws. Remove the blower driver. Remove the 4 cap screws in the blower base. Loosen the cap screws in the bellow bands and remove the 3 sheets of metal screw holding the bellows bands to blower on number 1 and turn blower. Remove the through panel at the side of the cab. On number 2 end of the turn the blower 90 degrees to the left to lift the governor and remove through the side panel. B. Motor connection bellows. Remove the band from the holes of the bellow of the traction motor. Remove the 10 cap screws holding the bellows of the truck's center and bolster. To replace the bellows, reverse this procedure. 30. The foundation brakes. The brake shoes heads. Loosen the connection rod, turn and buckle. Remove the brake head key. The brake shoe is now free to drop toward the rail. To replace and reverse the procedure. B. Brake cylinders. Remove the pin of the air cylinder push rod. Disconnect the airline supply from the rear of the cylinder. Remove the 4 cap screws holding the air cylinder to the truck. Slide the air cylinder toward the bumper. Remove the air cylinder at the side of the baluster. To remove the air cylinder, reverse the procedures. Hand brake shaft. To remove the bolt of the handbrake shaft and chain connection. To remove the handbrake head. Removing the 4 cap screws. Remove the handbrake staff through the cab. D. The handbrake. To remove the 4 cap screws, retain the handbrake head to cab. Lift the handbrake head off of the handbrake shaft, the handbrake staff, and to replace the reverse of this procedure. Reverse this procedure. 31. Compressor. Assembling the compressor. Remove the compressor door at the side of the cab. Remove the 4 bolts retaining to the compressor door. Angle support. Disconnect the drain line. Disconnect the delivery of the governor airlines. Loosen the 4 nuts holding the compressor to the adjusting base. Push the compressor inward. Remove the belt. Remove the 4 cap screws. Hold the compressor to the sub base. Slide the compressor through that opening in the side of the locomotive. To replace the use of reverse procedures. Compressor governor. To remove the panel on the left side of the locomotive. Disconnect the 2 air pipes from the governor unit. Remove 2 cap screws holding the governor to the locomotive frame. Governor can now be removed from the locomotive. Replace their We use the reverse procedure. 32. The draw gear coupler to remove the yoke pin of the coupler chain. Remove the coupler chain or remove the coupler pin. Coupler can now be removed from the locomotive to replace reverse this procedure. Draft gear yoke. Remove 6 double nuts holding the draft gear retainer. Draft gear can now be removed from the locomotive to replace the use of reverse procedure. 33. The journal bearings. Remove the waste of the journal box. Replace the jack underneath the journal box jack padding. Raise the box with adjusting the actuating jack unit of clearance insufficient, and remove the brass to replace the brasses. Use the reverse procedure. 34. Electrical equipment. Main generator. Disconnect all wiring, piping, gauge lines of the engine and generator. Remove all hold doors. Remove the lubrication oil filter. Lubricate of the oil supply. Disconnect and remove the shutter rod. Remove the heater and the heater fuel tank. Can disconnect the air supply to the horn. Remove the pre-cleaners. Remove the exhaust pipe hosing from the cabin door, and remove the cap screw of the hold the U-bolt exhaust clamp to the cap of the front of the sheet. Remove the wind sheet to enclose the main generator. Remove hold top. Disconnect the radiator pipe. Remove the radiator from the front section. Remove the cap screws retaining engine from the front support of the generator supports. Slide engine generator unit and toward the bumper unit until the unit clears the cab from the front sheet. The engine generator unit can now be removed from the locomotive to replace the reverser. This procedure. B. Traction motors. Disconnect all the air standing lines and traction motor leads between the truck and main frame. Disconnect the handbrake on number 2 truck. Disconnect the speedometer cable. Remove the 4 cap screws from each truck. Stop casting 2 per truck. De-wheel the locomotive. Remove the traction bellows. Remove the place of the traction motor and springs retaining the ends. Lift the traction motor out of by lifting the lug out at the traction motor housing. Remove the motor suspension spring, the hangers. Remove the 4 traction motor gear housing from the screws retainers. Traction motor gear housing can now be removed. Remove the 8 bolts holding the traction motor axle gearing to tie in the front of the lifting lugs from the lifting device. Raise the straight up traction motor can now be removed from the truck proper. To replace, reverse the procedure. Auxiliary generator. Loosen the auxiliary generator base. Adjusting screw. Remove the belt. Remove the wiring at terminal box. Remove the 4 bolts holding the generator to the generator. Adjusting the base. Lifting the accelerator up out through the floor flat hatch between the 2 main generators to replace the reverse of the procedures. Batteries. Disconnect all the cables. Open the center door on each side of the cab. Remove the retaining bars and insert the battery lifter. Lift the batteries and slide out of the cabin in the side door to remove the reverse for this procedure. 35. Radiator. Disconnect shutter control lever. Dismantle radiator grill shutter assembly to the removing 18 cap screws. Disconnect pipes of the oil cooler. Remove the cap screws retaining oil cooler. Remove the oil cooler. Remove the oil cooler support angle at the top at the bottom of the radiator unit. Remove the core, removing the 4 cap screws per the core to replace the reverse procedure. 36. Remove radiator shutter. Remove the shutter control lever. Remove 18 cap screws retaining grill shutter assembly to replace the use of reverse procedure. Section 2. Lubrication. The traction generator. The generator is equipped with a single bearing at the commutator, and to ensure the continued satisfaction of the bearing, it must be properly lubricated. All dirt and other foreign matter excluded from the contact with the bearing. The lubrication used, which is grease, is held in the bearing chamber around the bearing by 2 steel Libra seals, 1 at each side of the bearing. The bearing is provided the overflow of the excess grease. Avoid over lubrication of these bearings as well as under the lubrication. Refer to LO 55-1279 for the lubrication instruction. Grease leakage of overflow is noticed as apparent bearing or as a period of longer than recommended between the greasing. Should be allowed thoroughly clean to the fittings of the adding the greases so it is not as forced the dirt into the bearing with grease. 38. Auxiliary generator. The generator is equipped with 2 bearings which are held in the position to the on-shaft of the housing. The inner bearing caps lubrication will be similar to the discussed in paragraph 37. The traction motor armature bearing. The armature bearing housings are arranged in the gear and arranged for grease lubrication through the element fittings, and lubrication bearings are grease indicated in Figure 5. Through cleaning fittings before adding in grease as so not to force the door into the bearings with the grease. The length of the time between greasing and greasing and correct amount of the grease, proper bearing lubrication depending upon severity of service and number of the hours of operation. If the grease leakage or overflow is noticed, a period longer than specified should be allowed. Over the grease of the bearings may be also harmful. Under greasing is to be avoided. The over greasing is indicated to leakage to access the grease out through the Labrynth seals where it gets oil to go into the brushes and the accumulator and the windings. Examine the Labrynth seals of regularly ended grease has been forced either to the decrease the amount of the grease they have added, length of time between greasing. A careful check of the condition of the bearings and the equipment is dismantled for the repair of the routine inspection will show whether the greasing schedule is satisfactory or should be changed in future. Axle bearings. Description of the bearings. They are a sleeve and type arranged for the oil and waste lubrication. Shown so a section through the axle bearings. In order to obtain satisfactory result with these bearings, it is important to suitable grade of waste, good oil, and to pack the waste of the bearing manner. Packing the bearing. The proper bearing package or the proper packing of the bearings is often utmost of the importance. Poor packing is responsible for a large percentage of the hot bearings. Use of long fiber wool waste, previously saturated oil for at least 24 hours. Drain on a screen and grate at several hours, and use of oil specified in Figure 5. The oil drain of the oil well is the bearings. The capillary attraction is standard of the waste and therefore essential of the proper lubrication to provide a continuous path of oil flow. This means the long strand wool waste must be used and the waste must be actual contact with the journal. The first step in packing the bearings is prepare the wicks and a bunch of oil waste and mix a piece of packing into the skein. Forms a sufficient length of the reach from the bottom of the waste chamber out about 6 inches above the seat of the waste chamber cover to twist the skeins of one complete turn in order to hold the strands of yarn in place for produce a spring and wick. Pack as many skeins as possible in the waste chamber starting at the inner end of the bearing and worn outward. It is important to the bearing window to be completely covered within the skein and the upper ends of the skein to hang out over the seat. Lubrication order 1105-1279. The fan bearings, the air cleaner, the fuel injection pump, check level, quarterly drain and refill, lubricate or lube the oil filter, drain, sludge, clean and renew the elements. Hold the crankcase, breather, and washer and saturate the element with the OE. Crankcase fill, main generator bearing, master controls, reverser drum, handle brake. Apply sparingly to the reverser drum. Apply to the brake. Apply to the pins. Windshield wiper. Apply to the piston cup and the cylinder or air compressor. See note 3. Hinges, latches, shutters and linkages. Belt windings of the fulcrum pin. Apply to bushings. Hour meter. Remove the plug. Insert the grease. Traction motor armature bearings 2 ounces per bearing. See noted in 2. Crankcase level, crankcase drain, traction motor axle bearings maintain 1 3/8 of an oil level, traction motor blower, auxiliary generator bearings 1.5 ounces per bearing. See note 2. Traction motor gears add 1.5 pound. Bolster center and plates 3 ounces. Brake rigging, all pins and bushings, journal boxes, keep them filled. And that is the lubrication diesel electric 56.5 inch gauge 44 ton 0440 Lewis model 400 horsepower Davenport Belzer. Lubrication key. The lubrication OE oil is heavy duty, about with the strengths in above 32 degrees level at 30 and 32 degrees below 0 30 and also below 0 10. LO, the oil lubrication and lighting. The LO 10 above 32 degrees, 32 degrees below 0, 10 or LO, and below 0, 10. The OC lubrication car and locomotive engine. The OCs are in for above 32 degrees above, and is fine. Where above 32 degrees, below 32 degrees, between 32 degrees and 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The only changes I see in the chart is we only lubrications are 306 and S. Lubrication general for purposes O and SC. The lubrication steam cylinder compounded. BR lubrication of the belt and roller bearing or ball and roller bearing. GA grease of the automotive and arteries. GG grease graphite, and CW the chain exposed gear and wire roping. The intervals are daily, weekly, 2 weekly, monthly, 2 months, and quarterly, 3 months, semi-annually 6 months, and annually 12 months. Note: the air cleaner will weekly remove the wash cups and refill the CE with refill with OE, oil and engine heavy duty cylinder mark. Monthly wash entire unit of refill. Ball bearings lubricate either the first month of service and semi-annually thereafter. Air compressor daily check oil levels simultaneously. Drain and refill clean of the replaced element of the air cleaner is required. Reverse the drum contacts not illustrated. Monthly apply to the film of the oil lubrication within the lint of the free cloth. Remove all excess oil. Brake cylinders not illustrated lubricated in the OSCs. The oil lubrication steam cylinder compound when assembling the device over buffering or repairs. Brake level not illustrated in the local grease graphite when assembling the device. Overhauling of the repairs where assembled bled with the 306 sparingly every 3 months. Comply the lubrication equipment of all times instruction that contain the Harlem mandatory and Paris and preceded in conflicting and lubrication instruction dated and prior to the date of the lubrication order. Here we have a picture of a bearing package watt axle bearing with a long fiber waste of wool oil level and dill pocket with a bearing and oil opening. The cover about 16 inches is enough to hold the place. After the wick formally chamber and press it to the horizontally tight as the axle means of suitable packing in hold in the place of forcing the necessary additional packing behind it to fold the loose upper ends of the skeins over the waist of the tap down tight. Place the saturated waste large enough to fill with the remainder of the waste chamber on the top of the wick to catch the whole dirt within the mighty fall in the bearing housing. Cover is open. After the bearing has been properly packaged, fill in the well with the oil properly level heat of the oil. Pour the oil within the oil pocket of not on point to the waist. If too much oil is poured into the well, it will overflow. The waste of the oil. Here in figure 7, you see the method of packing in a journal box. And the height of the oil measured from the bottom of the chamber using a flexible gauge should be always maximum of 2.375 of an inch or a minimum of 1.25 of an inch. Inspection: oil bearings in this type of good condition, properly packed, linear fiber wool waste supplied in the good grade of the oil should be run to about 1,000 to 1,100 miles between the oiling periods. It is advisable for each of the operator to work actual services most suitable oil schedule to fit the operating condition and the equipment, such as the schedule determined largely system of the inspection of the other equipment on a traction unit and the inspection bearings. Carefully wipe out all dirt of the oil box lid before it was open. Repacking the periods. Repack the bearings after they have been serviced of 50,000 miles as a maximum at least once a year. When repacking the bearing, remove all the waste, discard which is in glaze and charred, and refill the bearings with good clean oil wasting to which has been added sufficiently new waste to allow for any of the old waste discarded and destroyed, but about once or 3 months tease up the waste in the bearings to make it more efficient. Precautions: use a longer wool waste. Keep the waste teased up. Use the waste has been saturated within the clean oil. Use a clean oil, high quality, correct grade. Keep the oil waste in a closed can and pour oil with the oil well. See the oil box lids and are closed. Do not flood the bearings of the oil. Gear lubrication of the teeth of the gear and pinion should never appear in the dry, but should be well covered in lubrication. The main journals and the packing the main journals frequently as condition as may require the good grade of the wool waste soaked in oil as specified in Figure 5 for at least 24 hours and drained for about 6 hours. To keep temperature of the oil of the room within which is the waste of the drain about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Pack a roll of drain waste marked on a figure of 7 tightly halfway around the journal in the package at the bottom of the box. Place the packing around the mark B in the position moderately against the journal, both sufficient to make good contact, and applying the waste somewhat looser than side of the box to prevent the center of the journal part B, part A, and part C. The center of the journal D. After packing the pour free oil over the waste along the sides of the box near the center, place a widely semi-dry waste C between the end of the journal front end of the box and shown in the purpose to which to serve as dirt collector can easily be renewed and required air compressor to refer to TM55-2034 and Figure 5 of the lubrication instructions. 42 air brakes to refer to TM55-2029 Figure 5 to lubrication instructions. Diesel engine refer to TM55-1046 for Figure 5 of lubrication instructions. Miscellaneous equipment Figure 5 covers and complete lubrication instructions for all equipment not included in above paragraphs. Section 3, General Maintenance. Electrical equipment. Maximum service can be obtained on electrical machinery only to keep it dry and clean. This is especially true within copper and dust and brake shoe dust and other metallic matter. May collect in and about apparatus. Blow out the apparatus periodically with the use of dry air, compressed air, wiping off the parts of accessible clean wiping rags, wash and wiping rags, and preferable cotton waste as they are liable to leave the land. When in using the cleaning of the vicinity exposed of the mica installation, do not use the high pressure. Use as small flakes of mica will be flown and finally resulting in completing destruction of the installation. Oil is destructive insulating materials as collected is the dust and the dirt causing them to break down electrically, and lubrication of apparatus extremely care of the preventing lubrication of getting onto the insulated parts, and if any does get on the through or wipe off the clean wiring rags. Keep all screws, bolts, and within the secure connections of the cleaning tight to ensure the good contact when in making the ground connection. Thoroughly clean the surface to which the connection to be made of the all dirt paint and ensure the good electrical contact. Paint all cables exposed to the dirt, moisture, especially with creepage, and important electrical installation varnish informing the military specification MIL V1137A, and varnishing high installation qualities gives a smooth surfaces with which is easily clean. 46. The control equipment. Each control equipment periodically loosen the nuts for the screw, counter pin, missing knot, split, or broken wearing springs. 4. Contact pressures of the interlocks, relay contacts, grease, dirt on installation materials, worn and burned contactors, loosening terminals and connections, broken insulators. When painted controls using installation varnish is specified by the paragraph. Control equipment use insulating varnish specified in paragraph 5D. Running gear auxiliary. Inspect the trucks and parts and running gear equipment frequently as the service conditions may require to loosen the missing bolts and nuts. Wearing worn plates, broken bearings, defective gears, gear cases, broken springs, etc. 48. Water and cooling system. Before the filling of the system, be sure the drain valves and drain cocks are closed. Use only in soft water as freeable and possible from scale from mineral if possible to obtain the software. Treat the available water with some commercial water softener. Replenish the water supply as required to make up the least leakage of evaporation. The cooling system is drained, opening at all drain valves and shut off valves, whether the occurring of the water piping. Make sure that all parts of the system, including the engine block, any part water of the cooled auxiliary is drained, and refer to TM 551046 for the instruction by the drainage engine. The drainage cooling system periodically to remove the dirt and sediment with the draining the cools periodically to remove the dirt, sediment, and accumulates should be done to the end of the days run. And material in suspension will drain the liquid. Section 4, preventive maintenance services. I'm going to pause it.